Remember when opening your kitchen cupboard on a frozen January night felt like discovering a treasure vault? There was a time in Canada when those tall wooden cupboards weren't just storage, they were survival kits, memory boxes, and the heart of winter life all rolled into one. Today we're pulling open the doors to explore 10 things every Canadian home kept in the cupboard for winter. Red Rose Tea Box. Close up on an orange Pico. Red Rose box sitting on the cupboard shelf. The corners are worn soft from years of handling. Steam rises from a brown mug on the kitchen table. In the background, the CBC Evening News plays on a small television. Red Rose was born in St. John, New Brunswick in the late 1800s. By the early 1900s, the tea was being blended and packed in Atlantic Canada, becoming a fixture in homes across the country. Then came the advertising magic. Only in Canada, you say? Pity became one of the most recognized slogans in Canadian pop culture, a cheeky reminder that this tea was ours. But it wasn't just advertising that made Red Rose special. For decades, the company tucked little surprises into their boxes. Tea cards in the early days, and later, tiny Wade porcelain figurines from the 1950s through the 70s. Collecting those miniature animals and characters turned buying tea into a treasure hunt. Kids begged their parents to buy Red Rose just to see what tiny figure they'd get next. Every winter guest who walked through your door got offered a cup of just Red Rose at the kitchen table. After shoveling the driveway, after church on Sunday, after hockey practice when your fingers were still numb. It was the universal gesture of Canadian hospitality, served in chipped mugs that had seen 1,000 pots. Late-night chats at the kitchen table ran on Red Rose. Grandparents insisted on real tea, not that herbal nonsense. You'd dunk digestive biscuits into it while the radiator clanked and the wind howled outside. The ritual was simple. Boil the kettle, warm the pot, steep it strong, add milk and sugar if you wanted, and sit down to talk about everything and nothing. So why did Red Rose fade from being the automatic choice in every cupboard? By the late 20th century, grocery shelves exploded with options. Herbal blends, flavored teas, fancy imports, coffee pods, and cafe culture all crowded in. Red Rose stayed on the shelf, sure, but it lost its near monopoly. Younger generations wanted chai, green tea, or a latte from the corner shop. The orange Pico box went from essential to optional, one cupboard at a time. Kraft Dinner. That iconic blue box, wedged on a high shelf with kids' pencil scribbles on the side. A pot boils on the old coil stove, and someone's about to dump in that neon orange cheese powder that turns water into liquid nostalgia. Kraft Dinner launched across North America in the 1930s. Wartime rationing made it a hero, cheap, filling, fast, and it didn't need fresh ingredients. Busy households adopted it instantly. But here's the thing, Canadians eat far more Kraft Dinner per person than anyone else on Earth. Out of about 7 million boxes sold worldwide every week, roughly 1.7 million are eaten right here in Canada. That blue box isn't just food, it's a cultural marker. Winter was KD's prime season. Snow day suppers when parents got home late and the roads were icy, KD. Students in cold basement apartments with one hot plate, KD. Families at the cottage in February, the lake frozen solid. KD Friday, Lent suppers when you couldn't have meat. KD with a side of canned tuna if you were fancy. It was the ultimate backup plan. You could forget to defrost the chicken, run out of sandwich meat, or just be too tired to think, and that blue box would be waiting. Boil water, add noodles, drain, stir in butter and powder, and 7 minutes later, everyone was fed. No judgment, no fuss, just comfort in a bowl. Telling and preparing this video took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the video. But starting in the 1980s, the freezer aisle got crowded. Frozen entrees, Microwavable meals, flavored instant noodles, pizza pockets, all of them fought for the title of quick dinner. At the same time, health concerns started bubbling up. People noticed the sodium levels, the artificial colors, the processed ingredients. Nutritionists frowned. Parents felt guilty. Kraft Dinner didn't disappear, but it stopped being the automatic choice. It went from always in the cupboard to grab it when we're feeling nostalgic. The blue box became a memory instead of a staple. Habitant French-Canadian pea soup. A tall yellow Habitant can sit behind other tins, its label printed in French and English. Someone opens it and pours thick pea soup into a pot. It lands with that unmistakable heavy glorp sound that means winter is being served. Habitant is a Quebec-based brand that's been making soups and condiments in Montreal since the early 20th century. Their pea soup became legendary, carrying forward a much older tradition. French-Canadian pea soup made from dried yellow peas, pork, and root vegetables goes back to settler and peasant cooking, a hearty dish designed to stretch ingredients and fill bellies through long, cold months. For many families, Habitant was the instant cabin lunch. Open a can, heat it up, slice some bread, maybe add a bit of cheddar on the side, and you had a meal that stuck to your ribs after hours of shoveling snow or skating on the pond. It was thick, savory, filling, and tasted faintly of wood smoke and old kitchens even though it came from a can. Anglophone families often bought Habitant as their French-Canadian treat, especially around New Year's or when holiday leftovers ran out and you needed something different. It was a small taste of Quebec culture, right there on a shelf in suburban Ontario or rural Alberta. Kids either loved it or hated it. There was no middle ground. Some thought it tasted like liquid warmth and begged for seconds. Others took one look at the gray-green sludge and refused. But parents kept buying it because it was cheap, lasted forever, and could save dinner when nothing else sounded good. So why did pea soup lose its cupboard throne? Growing concerns about sodium and processed foods played a part. The rise of slow cookers meant families could make their own soups from scratch, tailoring flavors and controlling ingredients. Then came the refrigerated fresh soup cartons, positioned as healthier and more gourmet. Habitant stayed a recognizable brand, but the yellow can stopped being a winter essential. Pea soup became optional, not automatic. Crown and Beehive corn syrup. A metal tin of Crown Golden corn syrup sits high in the cupboard, its lid crusted with dried sugar. Parents kept it out of reach so kids wouldn't sneak a spoon in for a sweet hit. Someone pours the thick golden syrup into a pot, getting ready to make butter tarts or those chewy molasses-style squares that stuck to your teeth. Golden corn syrup became a major sweetener in Canadian baking during the 20th century. Brands like Beehive and Crown dominated the market, and they did something brilliant. They turned syrup into collectibles. Beehive ran famous NHL picture promotions from the 1930s through the 60s, tucking hockey player photos inside tins. Crown brand ran competing hockey photo promos. Suddenly, buying syrup meant you might get a card of Maurice Richard or Gordie Howe. Kids begged their parents to buy specific brands just for the collectibles. But beyond the promotions, corn syrup was essential winter fuel. Butter tarts, pecan-style pies, popcorn balls at Christmas, pulled candy on snow days. All of it ran on syrup. Some families poured it on pancakes or toast when the real maple syrup ran out, though purists would never admit to that. It was the secret ingredient in holiday baking marathons. Grandmothers guarded their butter tart recipes, but everyone knew the magic came from that golden tin. The syrup made fillings chewy, gave cookies their snap, and held together all those festive squares that got packed into tins and given as gifts. So why did the big syrup tin fade from shelves? Starting in the 1980s, nutritional advice began hammering refined sugars. Families cut back on heavy baking, switching to lighter sweeteners or store-bought cookies instead. Granola bars, ready-made desserts, and less time in the kitchen all meant less need for a giant tin of syrup. The tins lost their prime cupboard real estate, replaced by smaller bottles used occasionally, if at all. Redpath sugar. A 2-kilogram or 5-kilogram Redpath sugar bag sits on the shelf, its top rolled tight and clipped with a wooden clothespin. Fine sugar dust coats the shelf underneath. A mother or grandmother scoops sugar with a chipped teacup, the way her mother did before her. Redpath Sugar was founded in Montreal in 1854, making it Canada's first cane sugar refiner. The landmark Toronto Waterfront Refinery opened in 1959 and still operates today, a massive red and white building that's become part of the city's skyline. In winter cupboards, those big Redpath bags sat like anchors. They powered holiday baking binges, Sunday dessert sauces, endless pots of tea and coffee, and jam-making sessions that filled the house with sweet steam. Christmas cookies, fudge, shortbread, toffee, everything pulled from that bag. It wasn't fancy, it was just sugar. But having a big bag meant you were ready for anything. Unexpected guests, a school bake sale, a craving for cinnamon toast on a stormy afternoon. Running out of sugar was a minor household crisis, like running out of milk or bread. Families measured sugar in cups, spooned it into glass jars, and rationed it carefully when money was tight. Kids weren't allowed near the bag unsupervised because everyone knew someone who'd been caught sneaking spoonfuls straight from the top. So why did those oversized bags disappear from so many cupboards? As home baking declined and people became more sugar conscious, demand shifted. Smaller bags replaced the giants. Sugar cubes, artificial sweeteners, and ready-made desserts took over. Dual-income households had less time to bake from scratch, so that 5-kilogram bag became unnecessary. Sugar went from staple to occasional ingredient, and the big Redpath bag became a memory of busier, sweeter kitchens. Robin Hood flour. A big Robin Hood flour bag leans in the dark corner of the cupboard or pantry, the Archer logo faded but still recognizable. White dust clings to apron fronts and kid sweaters. The bag is heavy, awkward, essential. Robin Hood flour started in the early 1900s, milled in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, and later expanded across Canada. It became one of the country's best-known flour brands, trusted by home bakers from coast to coast. That big sack was the backbone of winter cooking. Bannock for breakfast, biscuits for stew, dumplings floating in chicken soup, cinnamon buns on Sunday morning, homemade bread when the storm closed the roads and nobody could get to the store. Flour was tied to storm days. When the weather turned dangerous and the power might go out, someone started baking. It was practical. Use up the perishables, keep the oven running for heat, and fill the house with the smell of something rising. But it was also comforting. Kneading dough gave you something to do with your hands while the wind screamed outside. Grandmothers kept their flour in the bag, scooping directly with a measuring cup. Some families transferred it to big tins or covered crocks to keep it fresh and safe from pantry moths. Either way, you always had flour, always. So why did that big sack stop being standard? By the 1970s and 90s, cheap supermarket bread, boxed cake mixes, and frozen dough killed the need for massive flour supplies. Dual-income households didn't have time for from-scratch baking. Pre-made pizza crusts, biscuit tubes that popped open, and bakery cookies from the grocery store all replaced the flour sack. It shrank from a standing winter staple to something you grabbed in a small bag when a recipe called for it. Baked beans. Sturdy tins of baked beans line the shelf, labels familiar and comforting. Maybe a French-language Clarkin sits among the hinds. Beans bubble in a pot, ready to be served with toast, brown bread, or sliced wieners. Baked beans have deep roots. Indigenous peoples slow-cooked beans with maple syrup and fat in earthenware pots long before European contact. Canned baked beans arrived in the late 1800s and early 1900s as convenience food, spreading across households in many countries, including Canada. Heinz became the dominant name, but Clark Foods, a Canadian brand founded in the 19th century, held its own with loyal fans. Winter cupboards held beans for one reason: they were the ultimate cheap backup. Saturday night suppers across the country meant beans, wieners, maybe a dab of mustard. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just fuel. Beans showed up everywhere: scout camps in the snow, sugar shack outings after collecting sap, cottage breakfasts when you woke up to a foot of fresh snow outside, late night shifts when workers needed something hot and filling, Lent Fridays when families avoided meat. Kids had mixed feelings. Some loved the sweetness, the soft texture, the way beans soaked into toast. Others picked around them, eating only the wieners or the bacon bits if you were lucky enough to have them. But everyone knew the smell: rich, tomatoey, faintly smoky, unmistakably beans. So why did beans lose their throne? Low-carb and low-sugar trends hit hard. People started reading labels and worrying about hidden sugars and sodium. Changing tastes and a flood of other convenience meals, frozen pizzas, microwave dinners, instant noodles, meant beans were no longer the automatic backup. They stayed on shelves, but stopped being essential. The Saturday night bean tradition faded as families found faster, flashier options. Carnation evaporated milk. A short, squat can of evaporated milk hides near the back of the cupboard, labels slightly yellowed from age. Someone punctures the top with a triangle can opener. Psst, and the thick cream pours out. Evaporated milk was developed as a shelf-stable dairy product in the late 1800s. Brands like Carnation became household names across North America by the mid-20th century, valued for their long shelf life and versatility. In Canadian winter cupboards, evaporated milk served a specific purpose. It added richness when you needed it. Fudge at Christmas, pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving, creamy chowders on cold nights, and the ultimate luxury, a splash in coffee when company came over and you wanted to seem fancy. Fresh cream was expensive or hard to get in rural areas, especially in winter when delivery trucks struggled through snow. Evaporated milk solved that problem. It sat in the cupboard for months, waiting for the moment you needed something special. Some families used it in their tea, swirling it in to create a cloudy, creamy cup that felt indulgent. Others saved it strictly for baking, treating it like a precious ingredient not to be wasted on everyday drinks. So why did evaporated milk fade from its default spot? Refrigerated distribution improved dramatically. Fresh milk, cream, and half became cheap and available everywhere across Canada, even in remote areas. Suddenly, there was no reason to rely on canned dairy. Then lactose-free and plant-based milks entered the market, offering even more choices. Evaporated milk went from necessary to niche, pulled out only for specific recipes or by people who remembered its old magic. Maple syrup tins. A large metal can of maple syrup sits on a high shelf, decorated with Sugar Shack artwork and Quebec pride. Kids watch as the can is carefully opened for pancakes, French toast, or the ultimate treat, sugar on snow. Maple syrup has roots stretching back to indigenous food traditions long before European contact. It became a signature food of what is now Canada, especially in Quebec and Ontario. Families would stock up on big tins from local producers or sugar shacks, buying enough to last through winter and into early spring. That big tin wasn't just syrup, it was a connection to the land, to the bush, to the rhythm of the seasons. Opening it meant something. Special weekend breakfasts when everyone was home, winter carnivals where syrup got poured on fresh snow and rolled onto popsicle sticks. Quiet Sunday mornings when the world outside was frozen and the world inside smelled like warm pancakes. For many families, the tin represented a tie to relatives back home. A cousin who worked a sugar shack, an uncle who tapped trees every March, a grandmother who remembered boiling sap over an open fire. Buying syrup from a roadside stand or directly from a producer felt like keeping a piece of that tradition alive. So why did those big tins stop living in every cupboard? Smaller bottles in glass or plastic became standard in supermarkets, easier to store and pour. Some families switched to cheaper pancake syrups, the fake stuff that cost half as much. As family sizes shrank and storage habits changed, the big tin became impractical. Maple syrup stayed loved, but the format shifted. The metal can became a relic of a time when families were bigger, breakfasts were slower, and winter lasted forever. Canned fruit cocktail and peaches, stacked cans fill the cupboard. Fruit cocktail with its single bright maraschino cherry, peach halves heavy in thick syrup. Someone opens a can and the fruit slides into a glass bowl, slippery and sweet. Whipped cream goes on top if you're feeling fancy. Canning technology boomed in the 20th century, letting families preserve summer's harvest for winter tables. Imported and domestic canned fruits became an affordable way to bring sweetness to cold months across North America, including Canada. Winter cupboards held these cans for one reason. They were summer in a tin. Sunday desserts, holiday ambrosia salads, school lunch puddings, Jell-O molds that wobbled on the table. For many kids, the single red cherry in the fruit cocktail was the ultimate prize, worth fighting siblings over. Canned peaches had their own magic. Slice them over ice cream, serve them with cottage cheese, eat them straight from the can with the syrup dripping down your chin. They tasted nothing like fresh peaches, but that wasn't the point. They tasted like winter comfort, like dessert, when fresh fruit was too expensive or unavailable. So why did those cans stop being automatic? Year-round access to fresh produce changed everything. Trucks brought strawberries in January, mangoes in February. Frozen berries and tropical fruits filled freezer aisles. Families started worrying about the sugar syrups, turning toward no sugar-added options or fresh alternatives. The heavy canned fruit that once symbolized abundance became a symbol of outdated eating. Those stacked cans disappeared from winter cupboards, replaced by fresh fruit flown in from warmer climates or bags of frozen berries that felt healthier, lighter, more modern. So there you have it, 10 cupboard staples that defined Canadian winters for generations. From red rose tea to fruit cocktail, these weren't just foods, they were memories, traditions, and survival tools rolled into one. Times change, cupboards evolve, but the warmth these simple items brought to cold winter nights, that stays with us forever. Thanks for taking this nostalgic trip down memory lane. Until next time, stay warm and keep those memories alive.